Hola, muy buenas a todos y a todas. Hoy tengo el placer de presentar al que yo considero uno de los líderes y de las personas más formadas a nivel global en el mundo de la impresión 3D, que tengo el placer de conocer desde 2021. Él es Stephan Mansour, es presidente de la American Society Testing Material en el grupo de trabajo 42 de construcción, pero también es colaborador y coinversor y colíder de la ISO ASTM en el grupo de trabajo, el G80 que llamamos, ¿no? Es especialista en la construcción, con más de 15 años de experiencia en la industria 4.0. Y para mí, lo tengo que decir con todas las palabras, ¿no? En mayúsculas, es un honor y un placer tenerlo aquí. Él habla inglés, por lo que voy a empezar a hablar en inglés a partir de ahora, pero quería expresar mi gratitud en español. Así que, hi, Stephan. Thank you so much for accepting this meeting. I was talking into Spanish, sorry, saying that I met you in 2021 when you were starting with the standard, with the 3D printing, a concept that we didn't hear so much. And now you are a specialist, an expert in the for Industry 40.0, also a chair of American Society Testing Material in the F42, it's specific for construction, and the joint group 80 for 3D printing. So it's an honor. I can continue talking, but I prefer that you speak because I think that we can learn a lot about you. I'm really happy that you were here because I admire you. So thank you.
No, thank you for having me, and it's a great pleasure to be here and happy to discuss 3D printing moving forward.
Yeah, we said that we are talking about Industry 4.0. You have more than 15 years experience in this sector. And I said, why 3D printing? Why did you decide to start in that world, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, a little bit of background of myself, just to give you some perspective. I started off in construction, did that now looking at 20 years in construction industry. I was working for a general contractor, a builder based out of Athens, Greece. And our projects were mainly in the Middle East. So we're talking with civil projects, heavy civil, like dams and bridges and so on, but also oil and gas and pipelines projects as well. The characteristic of the projects in the Middle East is that they're very complex. The architectural designs are very intricate and very complex sometimes. And trying to do that in a traditional way was also very time consuming and sometimes not efficient in trying to build those very complex geometries. We were also, as a large contractor in the Middle East, that we had our own systems, but we're also looking to improve the way we were doing construction. So we were looking at innovative technologies, and one of those technologies was 3D printing, but not in a sense that we have this technology and we have to find a way to introduce it. We were looking at it from a perspective that, okay, what are we facing problems in our company or in the construction sector, and what tools out there are available to solve that problem? So we were looking at 3D printing as one solution or one tool to resolve the problem that we were having with complex geometries. And we were able to get a project in Saudi Arabia in 2018 to print a single family home. So the initial designs that we had from this home that we were going to print were your traditional walls and setup. But we ran into an issue where, okay, we are going to build it, but how are we going to certify it? And that's where the issue came up. So as a general contractor, you're supposed to issue a warranty. You're supposed to guarantee that the building will stand for 50 plus years. You have to issue a warranty for 10 plus years. So in order to do that, you have to know what you're building and buy the codes that you have, and also ensure that the codes are built or adapted to the building that you have. So since we were 3D printing and we were using a mortar material at the time, the engineer or the consultant who came in could not actually do a one-to-one correlation between the 3D printed element and the standards. So we had to go through that process of educating the engineer and sort of, okay, these are the standards we're going to build by, and so on. And going through that process took a long time. But also we had to change the design of the building so that we include your traditional columns and your beams as structural support. So that sort of stuck with me, that experience sort of stuck with me as we went through the project, and we completed the project in November 2018 at the time. And then we tendered for other projects. But again, the issue of standards and the issue of certification came up, and how we're going to build this and so on. That sort of continued with the projects that we tendered. Now, since I left the company in 2020, I moved to Toronto, Canada. I sort of thought, okay, now in order for this technology to move forward, for 3D printing to become a tool in the industry, we have to have the standards available for it. Because in the construction industry, if you don't build by standards, you don't build. You get your tender documentation, you get your packages for your tender and your proposal, but also you get the standards by which you build by. If one of those two is missing, then you cannot proceed with a project. So in early 2020, I reached out to everybody I knew in the industry at the time and sort of established this committee, which eventually became an official ISO ASTM committee in March of 2021. And those efforts of 2.5 years have led to the recent publication of ISO ASTM 52939, which was just published in December of last year. I'm now working on revising these standards to include the updates in the industry and new technologies and new materials and the new approaches in a revision effort. So that's going to be starting in the next few weeks. And then we will issue an update, hopefully in the next very near future, of this standard ISO ASTM 52939. We are also looking at other standards to actually help the 3D printing industry, but that's what we're looking for. The whole approach and aim now is to bridge the gap between traditional construction and additive construction. So how do you use existing standards to certify 3D printed structures? But also then once the industry is aware of this technology and how to use it and recognize the capabilities, we will start moving away from traditional to more innovative and more industrialized solutions.
Well, I have a lot of tips that I wrote on my blog note because I would like to share some impression of this perfect introduction, not only about your trajectory, your performance, but also about the industry, because you have been talking about key strategies with breaking the gap between the traditional standard and the new standard, because we know that the technology all the time is faster than the standard. Even if we are talking about a construction industry, a construction sector that is one of the less industrialized, So could you share with us which are the new steps for the AT joint group, or the new ways that the 3D printing material could be a structural element, or it is impossible, or there is a way that all the actors could work together in order to establish new protocols or new ways of consider the 3D printing material?
Yeah, so I mean, what we're trying to do here, again, when you go through a change of process, and I would like to start off the conversation by saying that the construction industry is not necessarily conservative and they don't want to change because they just like the way things are. The construction industry is tasked or responsible for delivering safe structures. So when they build something, it has to last, and it has to they have to make sure that it is safe, and when people live in those structures, that those structures stay up and do not collapse. So when you introduce a new technology, a new approach, they have to be convinced what you are proposing is equal or better performance than what they are already used to. So that's where the hesitation and the conservatism comes in when you talk about the construction industry. And this is why the approach that we took with this standard is saying, okay, this is what you're used to. These are the standards that you currently use in your day-to-day operations. And here's how you can apply these standards to the 3D printed elements. So yes, for the next couple of years, maybe we will still be using rebar. We will still be using columns and beams, your traditional reinforcement. But that's the time that is needed for the construction industry to understand and accept 3D printing as a tool in the industry. So then once they accept it and they understand it and they are comfortable with it, and then the structures at the time then would have been available for a few years, and they can see how it interacts with the environment and the industry, then we can move little by little to more innovative approaches where you have load-bearing walls. We can introduce different geometries for structural elements, and you can introduce different materials. You can introduce fibers in your materials instead of rebar. So these are the approaches that we're doing, but it has to take time. And the example I always give everybody is trying to explain this process is like I'm trying to go from a horse and carriage to an electric car. If I take away the horse and carriage and introduce the electric car, there's going to be a complete disconnect because they don't understand what happened. They don't understand this electric car. Where's the horse? And so on. So we are now at this point just taking the horse away, leaving the cart, putting sort of an engine on it, let people understand the concept first, understand the process, and then we move forward with introducing little changes until we have that very big leap where people now understand that, yes, okay, now I understand it, and we can make that big jump to more innovative. But having said that, we're not just waiting for that process to finish. We are actually being more proactive in that we are introducing new standards also that are dealing with structural elements. So trying now to work on these new innovative structural supports through a different work item in ASTM, but also working from a guideline perspective. So from a design guideline perspective, how do you take your 3D model and ensure that your details in the 3D model are in your printed element? So these are the standards that we're working on now, because we know that by the time we publish these standards, which will be anywhere between 3 to 5 years, that we don't have to be playing catch up or trying to rush to develop these standards. We're working to be more proactive, anticipating what is going to be required, and making sure that when the technology and the industry is ready, that the standards are also available to enable 3D printing as a tool in construction using innovative approaches.
That's exactly the idea that maybe all people are interested in hearing, because it's like from the ASTM, there is a program, there is a process that it's going to step ahead, that the way when the technology or companies around the world are working in this teaching, in this profile, in this software CAD/CAM and so on, working hard to put it on the table, there were a standard that can immediately appear, so make warranty to all the actors. So when there is someone hearing us about 3D printing, there is a specific niche of market thinking that this is not real, this is for the future, this is something that it's going to happen because the technology is not prepared. They were a standard, but you have said before, there isn't a standard, there is a warranty, there is a protocol, there is a solution for the traditional gap to the new technologies promotion, and the next step are controlled. The day or the way that actors like you or evocons or architects or designers must to deal, it's okay, I would like to be on this trend, because it's also a solution that you started talking about the first part of the meeting: execution time, geometries, problem with the budget, problem with affordable houses. And this is why you decided to starting on to looking for new strategies. So if you have the opportunity to share your impression with a constructor that is a traditional constructor that is thinking about to do this jump because the time is passing really fast, and they would like to be on part or be part of this. What do you consider that they should have or they should do for the first time? It's like teaching about the process, going to a conference, be a member of the ASTM. I don't know. I have some answer, but I would like to hear you.
So the initial idea is that in order, just like in normal construction, you have to evaluate what your problem is on the project or as a company, and then see what solution best fits that problem. So what solution out there is going to resolve my issue and my problem? The issues, just to give you an idea, the issues and problems we're having in the US market or North America in general, and in Europe and other places in the globe, is we're running out of labor. There is not much labor available in the construction industry. The construction industry demand is growing. So there's a big demand, especially in the housing sector, where we cannot keep up. There's a environmental impact an initiative going on where people are looking at different materials and trying to reduce waste. But also there's an issue of safety on the project sites in order to provide a safer working environment for everybody who works in construction. Now, going back to the tool and to the pain point, we have to realize, okay, if you are suffering from, for example, a demand issue that you need to build, let's say 100+ homes, you don't have the labor, you don't have the material, you don't have the skill set in order to actually achieve that, but you are tasked to actually build those homes. That's where automation will help you do that. So you are addressing a difficulty with a solution that is out there. 3D printing is another tool in construction. Just like we don't dig trenches by hand, we use excavators. This is what 3D printing is equally supposed to do. But also the way you address the business model for 3D printing is similar to any other business model you use with any traditional construction. You would not invest $2 million in an excavator or a bulldozer if your project is small. Or you don't have a project. You don't buy a bulldozer first and then think, okay, now how am I going to use the bulldozer? You have to see, okay, here's my project and here's my solution. At the same time, also, the relationships that you have with these technology providers is not unique. It is the same as you would deal with any technology provider or subcontractor on a normal project. You could either invest in buying the tool, the printer, if that works in your business model, or you can hire a service provider who comes in, does the print just like a subcontractor, and then when their scope of work is finished, they can take their printer and their expertise and leave. That way, you're not committed to a specific machine or a specific printer, but you're open and flexible to different needs based on the project that you have. So there's different ways to look at it, but also, again, it has to be done in a certain perspective that is not much different from your traditional. The way you look at it and the way you address it, yes, it's nice to go to conferences and it's nice to understand the different technologies that are out there, but that's where we come into play as ASTM and as consultants. So you can come to us. We can evaluate your process and your procedures and your project. We can recommend the best tool and best approach that you have. And there are different service providers and technology providers and material suppliers globally, and we'll try to match you up with that perfect solution that fits your needs. And again, work you through the process of answering all the questions that you might have, giving you all the information that you need. We also, ASTM does some conferences. So we do one yearly. The next one is going to be in Georgia, in Atlanta, in the US, where we try to educate people and show people what is new and going on in the technologies for additive construction. It is the process, and it's just like any, it is the process, but ensuring that what you're building is also safe. So as you are building, ensuring that there are certain quality control aspects that you take into account, but also that engineering review to ensure that, okay, in order, if I'm going 2 stories high or 3 stories high, how do I actually build my structural elements with the support that I need in order to accommodate that building? And again, also, it depends on where you are. Do I have to deal with seismic issues? Do I have to deal with hurricane? Do I have to deal with fire? And these are the different aspects that you have to take into consideration. And this is what we try to actually sort of bridge, again, the gap between traditional and construction, referencing your existing thermal, fire, structural requirements that you do for your traditional construction, and trying to apply that to the 3D printing. So again, your structures have to deliver equal or better performance than your traditional approaches, but also we are trying to ensure that, yes, for now, ISO 52939 bridges the gap, but with the new work items and the new standards that we're working on, we're trying to show you an innovative way of building. So instead of using rebar and columns and beams, maybe we can move away from your traditional column beam structure and have load-bearing walls that deliver your seismic, load-bearing, fire, and thermal proofing and the requirements that you have. But again, that has to go through a lot of testing. It has to go through a lot of approval. And these are the processes that we go through now in order to ensure that when the standards are published, that we have covered and proven scientifically that what we're trying to put in the standard is actually viable and doable, and we've done that work for you.
Yeah, I said that because as an architect, I have to deal with the same question all the time. It's okay, Noah, you feel comfortable signing the project, you feel safety if you are talking about 3D printing when you decided to build with 3D printing process. And I have to say yes, because there is a standard that you have said before. From us as an architect, it's like our starting point. It's like, okay, which elements or which part are composed or are part of a construction process. We are talking about electrician, plumbing, tiling. We are talking about a structural element, and we are talking about volume, about masonry. And the masonry, it's about to build, or it's going to move, or it's going to change due to 3D printing process. But as an architect, I have to take into account all the process, electrical, plumbing, and the 3D printing. Instead of doing manually, there is a machine that do that. So if we take into control of this process, it's okay. Yep. And then we can check the produce, and we have cost, and we have a budget. And this is my final question. Do you think that if you want to say something more, you would free? I think that we have to spend a lot of time, so I don't abuse to your predisposition. If we are talking about 3D printing, we are talking about construction 4.0. It's about Internet of Things. There is a machine which is connecting with a print that automatically repeat the process or the model that has been previously charged. So if we talk about 3D printing, we have to think about digitalization, but also about robotics, but also about automation, or it is impossible.
No, it is possible, but I mean, there's more to it than just technical. So when we talk about digitization of the construction sector and we talk about construction 4.0, it's not just the technical part of it. There's a lot of training, workforce development that has to go on, and in order to support this technology advancement. So you cannot advance one area in your construction sector, but then ignore the rest that need to support it and help this construction sector move on. if you want to introduce 3D printing as a tool in construction, you also have to ensure that the regulations are in place to actually support that. You have to ensure that people are trained in this technology and how to use this. So you have to introduce that into your universities and to your schools and your technical colleges. You have to ensure that your local authorities understand what is going on. So, and you have to ensure that the materials and the material suppliers are available to do that. So it is a whole ecosystem. So when we talk about digitization of the construction sector, yes, technology is one part of it, but it is not the only part of it. You have to introduce different technologies and different means in order to ensure that this does move forward. And that means that you have to address it, again, from a holistic perspective. And ASTM actually did a study for this based on the project that was funded by NIST, in which we looked into this. So we were looking at it from a holistic perspective. How do we enable the digitization of construction? And we came up with a report, and I'm happy to share that report separately so you can actually post this. But it talks about the workforce development, it talks about training, it talks about safety, it talks about the technology advancement, but also what needs to be done from a regulation perspective in order for the whole ecosystem to move forward and to achieve that digitization of construction.
So if I have to conclude your last paragraph, it's like the 3D printing is another tool of the future way of construction and the future way of construction evolution process. It's like this one tool that it's going to be complemented by other tools that let us architect, constructor, promoter, being on the top of the sustainability, of the productivity, but also minimizing risk and execution process.
Absolutely. So my vision for the future is that there's a 3D printer on every project, because it is addressing a specific need that it is achieving. So it is resolving a problem, it is providing a safer environment, it is producing things better, more efficiently, and more productively. But it's there for a purpose, not there because it's nice and fancy and it's nice to have, but because it's just another tool, just like we have excavators, cranes, telehandlers, and other tools in the construction site. This will be another tool in the construction site that nobody will even look at twice. So yeah, it's a 3D printer, fine, let's move on to something else. So that's my goal and that's my vision.
So as always, we are on the same wavelength, because I think that there is no better finish for this meeting. I think that's the message from my point of view. I think that it summarizes all the points that we have shared with this half an hour, more or less, or 35 minutes. So I only have to say thank you again. Thank you for sharing your vision, for promoting the construction sector with this standard, with this safety, with this protocol, because are the first point, are the key, are the basement of the future construction process or the future construction methods. Because if we innovate future technology, different technology, innovation, research, and so on, but there is no standard that support your challenge, your solution, it's gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna die. So I appreciate your role, I have to say in a private way, but I would like to say in public. I think that your role and your position of this leader of the American Society of Testing Material, it's needed, but also responsible that the 3D construction printed is in the way that it is.
Yeah, it is. And again, there's a lot to do, but we have come a long way. And there's with the ecosystem and with everybody involved in the industry, we are coming together in order to actually make this another tool in the industry. So yeah, a lot of work to do. A lot has been done, but we move forward.
Yeah, exactly, because there are a lot of companies trying to put it on the market, making effort, and this standard, this joint group lets all the actors work together and push together to standardize the process, and of course all that everybody wants: housing democratization, flexibility, promotion with warranty. I mean, all the tips that all people in the society would like to have.
Absolutely.
So thank you. I don't know if you would like to say a final message or a final impression of that day, so feel free.
No, thank you very much for the time. It was very interesting, and like always, connecting with you, and it was an interesting conversation. But if anybody needs any further information about additive construction, the easiest way to find me is through LinkedIn. But also I will provide my email address, and again, provide a link to that report that we published. So I look forward to connecting, discussing things forward, and thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Stephan.